Hey everyone, welcome back. Okay, this one has been cooking for a while and I thought I'd answer a question that keeps coming up. I've had a few people tell me Garuda's Expedite Suffering has infinite scaling, and some others saying it was non-viable because it's too slow. I've also had people ask if the Hikou setup works on any other frame. I've also had people suggest Breach Surge Garuda even though, well, there are already videos of that floating around from a while ago. We're also going to compare it to the classic buffer, Roar, to see how these options measure up and their purpose. This is a shorter video, so let's hop right into it. I'm not going to go into full detail on how Hikou concealed explosives work with 4 status procs like Garuda's Seeking Talents or Saryn's Toxin Lash today. If you want to see the full breakdown and how everything can synergize together for it, you can check out my original Hikou Expedite video for Saryn at the top right. So for Garuda today, well, this one is Expedite Suffering, but basically we're going to be using the Blending Talons augment because it has much better quality of life and radial cast. So casting Seeking Talons will make all enemies in the radius have 100% chance of slash procs when you hit them with literally anything. This is why it works well with Hikou concealed explosives, because it has a 16.6 meter AoE with primed fulmination, so you will proc ridiculous amounts of slash on all of them. For Expedite Suffering, you can then cast it and one-shot whatever you want with the 150 plus slash procs present. Because Seeking Talon persists the entire duration, Expedite damage will trigger Seeking Talon Bleed again, which can fuel into another Expedite. This is basically Garuda's version of Heat Inherit, but slash Inherit instead. There can be some wonky math here, but it's mostly pointless to try and min-max it since slash completely bypasses armor, and you can kill anything in the game by just casting Expedite once or twice more if you have half-decent builds. For Breach Surge, this works best in crowds. The Seeking Talon slash ticks will proc Breach Surge particles, and these particles will feed back into Seeking Talons for infinite scaling. Shooting into enemies works even better because these shots will trigger larger slash ticks, thus larger Breach Surge particles, which funnels back into itself. Once again, this is where the 16.6 meter radius AoE of Hikou with 0 fall off shines. Finally, for Roar, this is just your basic faction damage. It will multiply your Hikou concealed explosives damage the first time, then multiply the resulting slash DOTs again. Because there's no self-fulfilling loop, Garuda Roar builds require more strength than the other two, but also makes it more general purpose. So this is the Hikou build I'm using in all my showcases today. For Garuda, you can either run Viral so you don't need a primer, which honestly if you're an Expedite setup it does so much damage you don't need a primer because of the infinite loop and also having much higher scaling than Breach Surge, but limited by angle of cast. Otherwise you can run Prime Slip, Magazine, and Tainted Clip to get insane mag size for your burst. I can't fit that on these polarities so I'm sticking to the innate Viral so I can skip the primer. The primer build is whatever. I'm using CEDO to proc as many statuses at once and extend the status duration. Radiation is important to cause friendly fire and pull aggro off you, which is extremely useful in Steel Path, especially against hitscan Grineer. Viral for obvious reasons. Finally, this is your cookie cutter Vastilok armor strip build. There's literally nothing else worth throwing on it. You have attack speed, faster scaling for heavy against acolytes as needed if your Lodo has nothing else, extra 1-up for heavies if you need them, crit to proc arcanes with the Palace if you need it, free movement speed on demand, the forever useful armor strip and heat procs for light CC, and refreshing heat duration if you're using heat inherit strats while armor stripping. Carrier is the same as before, full utility build with radar, vacuum, holstered reload bonus, instant shield gate regen, ammo case to sustain Hikou, and a very light CC to stop melee units. No assault mode because that's what gets your Sentinel killed, unless your strat actually revolves around your Sentinel attacking. So let's hop to Garuda. This is our Expedite build for Demolysts, range so you can tag as many things as possible with Blending Talons. You don't want to get too close to the Demolysts and keep enemies off your back while fighting, as it is extremely helpful. You don't need too much strength because Expedite has ridiculous scaling, especially in Garuda, and none of our abilities need it except our 4 needing at least just 134 to reach 100% bleeds. This is a highly offensive build versus the Breach Surge variant that focuses on killing everything ASAP instead of CCing plus killing. This also means it's harder to stay alive, because our only way of CCing will be CEDO's ALTFIRE. But this gives the fastest Demolysst burst. Efficiency is irrelevant because of Arcane Energize and Bloodletting. Blending Talons makes her 4 radial and not feel like shit to use. Prime Sure-Footed to block the 16 meter stealth stagger of Hikou and your standard brief respite and rolling guard for iframes. Arcane Velocity so we can throw Hikou faster, obviously. Time to spawn our Dracarmanic Bombards, and let's go. Viral Haikus don't need a primer. You walk up, cast her forward, throw the Haikus and cast Expedite. That's it. Actually, let's try this again. So this time I'll barely tap them with Haikus to show that Expedite spam is actually viable. You spawn them again, cast 4, throw a few Haikus, cast Expedite again. Well, now they're dead. Sure, it's slower than throwing more Haikus, but this means because it doubles the final value each time, even shitty builds will overshadow good builds if the shitty build just casts Expedite more. The third Expedite cast will do 4 times more damage than the first, and the fourth will do 8 times more. The gap between good versus bad builds isn't 4 or 8 times, and you have a magazine size limit. So yes, Expedite Seeking Talons is viable, but you need a fast flash applicator to make it work. The higher range also will let you clear groups of enemies in Disruption faster to get them off your back and easily get key drops without needing to hunt them down. Now let's look at Breach Surge Garuda. This build has less range because Breach Surge CC is excessive. We have less strength, but near hit that 134 strength mark with growing power active. 96% is good enough. Breach Surge means surviving is much easier, and we don't really need Brief Respite since we're still going to be using Rolling Guard. We don't have to slash procs constantly doubling on your target, and it isn't really viable against single targets due to lack of sparks from crowds, but this caters towards high KPS modes more since they're less tanky, especially on Steel Path. Vigorous Swap works on buffing Breach Surge spark damage. It's literally a 2.65 separate multiplier, so use it if you want. Now let's see what happens if we proc Roaring Power, cast Breach Surge, and Seeking Talons. Well, they died after a little bit, so that's the famed infinite scaling synergy of Breach Surge Garuda. Now we can make this much better using our Haikus because 0 fall off and the high range of Breach Surge. So let's spawn them again, proc Roaring Power, cast Breach Surge and Seeking Talons, and now let's chuck some Haikus in it. Well, they die way faster. So this is basically it. Feel free to abuse this meme in Steel Path, I guess. It's equivalent to Saryn if you're willing to use this whole setup, and you will have to cast Seeking Talons somewhat often. You can get the Haikus funneling their damage back into themselves, but it's slower, and dependent on enemy quantities around. We can also get nice CC this way, which means no guaranteed need for CEDO ALTFIRE, and you don't absolutely need Brief Respite. Time to check the final Roar build. We took a ranged hit because Roar really wants higher strength to compensate for the Pepega lack of self-funneling the other two builds have. Feel free to run Brief Respite in the aura if you want to instead. Anyways, the premise is that this build has less maintenance to upkeep than the other two. In exchange, it has a much lower burst damage against DEMOLYSTS. It doesn't need many enemies to function like Breach Surge, but also does worse than Breach Surge in crowds, and doesn't have free CC, essentially the middle ground, but somehow worse than both. So let's spawn these Bombards one last time, proccing Growing Power and casting Roar, so you can just find crowds and cast Seeking Talons in them for the initial stun, then you Haiku the floor. Oh my god, look at that, they aren't dying as fast, just like I said. Well, that was expected. So if you actually kill quickly, it does work fine, but against tankier enemies, and say Endless or Level Cap, you will have a problem with them not dying quickly enough and no real CC, which can spell death. For Hikou memes at least, I would not recommend using Roar on Garuda. Hope that answers the question you've had, and wondering if I was ever going to cover and compare these Garuda setups. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or, better yet, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I've done with covering the Tempestari and the Sisters of Parvos updates. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. I'm also preparing to get you new war info once more info drops. You don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.